Good evening. Hope this finds you well on this third day of September 2024. I'm just coming off of celebrating Labor Day, which always the holidays on the Christian calendar are always going on the Gregorian calendar. They're always going to be in sync with some of the folks who celebrate the Hebrew holidays because they're aligned with the sun, moon, and stars. All right. And that is universal. And some of us are taught things outside of what we were taught by our foremothers and forefathers. And so, happy day. I am going to share with you something. I'm going to challenge you a little bit too. I'm going to share with you what I learned today about some patterns that people have gotten into. And my purpose in sharing this with you is to challenge you to think and rethink about some of the things that you've held to be true and know that there is a way to find out if that lines up with what is really true. So, finding out, learning, asking yourself, evaluating yourself to know if your patterns and your beliefs and your customs, your maxims, do they line up with what is really true? Why does this come up for me? I've heard this maxim of the law. I hear it, but it didn't really sit right with me, and I didn't really understand so much why until today, until I was able to put some things together myself, which is this maxim of if you don't know how to defend a right, then it's not your right. You don't have any rights that you can't defend. Well, I hear that, but that maxim is actually in opposition to natural law in my evaluation of it. Because in our natural systems, in our different cultures that our ancestors were in, they evolved in, the culture was such that although one might not have been able to defend their own rights, they would have had someone in their village to protect them and defend our rights. Now, being of me as a woman, not being as physically strong as a man, or maybe not having as much physical stamina in certain situations, it would be natural that a man would protect a woman. But since our culture is broken down, right? All this, I've seen some movie where there's some women out being warriors. Like these are ridiculous things. They're not in line with science and nature when it comes to growing a community, when it comes to a community having longevity, right? So the opposite of that would be really genocide on the community. So when we perpetuate some of these ideas that if you can't defend your right, then you don't have a right. Well, maybe that's true. However, is that an acceptable maximum to keep alive? Because another maxim is one when it comes to healthcare and healthcare services, which is first, do no harm. And this is in a field where people's lives are in your hands. Let's say you're a surgeon, a doctor, nurse, any kind of helping profession. The maxim, the first ethical maxim is do no harm. Quite different, right? Um, why this comes up for me is because I realize that some people have a way of evaluating things. And I've heard people who are good hearted people who have said that the first maximum of law, and they are people, someone I'm thinking of, they would never do harm intentionally to anyone, right? So this is not coming from someone who would intentionally do harm to anyone. So this message is not really directed toward someone who just has that maxim of law that they hold, that they accept. It's not directed toward them. I have no criticism for any man or woman as far as their thinking. None. This is directed to people who are in public service, um, even someone maybe dealing with their friends or loved one that might have an inaccurate view, an irresponsible view of life. And why I say this, because if everyone did some of the things that I learned people are doing at my local county, if everyone behaved like this, then this would not, this there would just be total disorder and total lawlessness, like all over. And the reason that people come to the United States of America to enjoy the culture here is because of the order. It is because of the love. And although over the years, yes, there have been many egregious acts that have taken place here, there are also virtuous aspects to life here. And I'm saying this because I want to build on what is good and I want to eradicate what is not good. And I want to give people the support and the tools to know how to make great decisions. Okay? So, just this thought of if I did this, thing, and if everyone else did what I did, would it be okay? Because sometimes you can see too that do no harm comes in line with that. Do no harm. And how am I knowing what is do no harm? Is this something sustainable that I'm doing? I think this idea first came to me as it relates to if what I'm doing is something that everyone else is doing, would it be okay? Type of idea. Someone shared that they imagined that they were someone who was a smoker. They would dump out their ashtray on the ground. So they imagine if everybody did that, dumped out their ashtray on the ground, like what kind of world would it be? And then imagining that helped them break that habit of doing that thing that they didn't probably see to be a big deal. Okay. So let me just bring this home to something more personal to me. I was doing some research, sharing along the way, hoping that the little things that come up to me to be important, that I'll share them and then they'll help somebody else along the way. More than one somebody else, like a lot of somebody else's. Because here in the United States of America, Iraq, Turtle Island, there, and particularly at one county on the line of the District of Columbia, there's an alarming rate of foreclosures and evictions that result from the unconstitutional foreclosures. And I think that I did not know that this was a problem around the continent, but it is. People losing their homes for $75, or maybe someone losing their home because they had accelerated mortgage payments, deductions, gifts, and in the process of people waking up to who they are and what their rights are in commerce, it's a process. And there are quite a number of people put on your path to deter you from the truth of what it takes to make a move. So they'll direct you toward a path that's harmful And you would have been better on your own, just kind of getting along to get along in the system. So I want to share with you the truth and to speak to people who want to be their best selves, who want to leave a legacy that they can be proud of. All right. So this is to encourage people to read and encourage people to think, not just do what their supervisor told them to do just because. Now, if that's worked out for you, I warn you, now's the time of awakening, and you have a higher power to answer to, okay, when it comes to karma and that sort of thing. And with that said, there are international agreements that are documented and written, and so it's your responsibility to be aware of what they are. Okay, because your supervisor might not be able to save you when someone is holding you accountable for you breaking international treaties and agreements. And you don't want to mess with anybody, because then that way you can be sure you won't mess with the wrong one who will enforce their rights at harm to you as a public servant. Okay, and there's a book. The author's last name is Maxwell. I think his first name is John Maxwell. And it talks about servant leadership. It's a great book. Everybody should read that book. Trying to use that word should too much, but it's a great book. All right, so I want to talk today about accurate thinking, and it's right along with my subtitle right here, right? Love, life, and logic. These words, they go together. Love is good order. Life is good order. And thinking logically is important in order to exude these things, right? In order to live long and in order to be loved. Because if things are not done in a logical manner, then you can't say it's love, right? Love isn't just like how you feel. It's good order. Okay. So I know what to do with this. I'm just sharing so that I'm not waiting to blur out a whole bunch of information that'll be hard to digest. All right. So I have been the victim of, and my loved one, the victim of illegal and unlawful eviction from a foreclosure. So everything that starts in fraud remains in fraud. Okay, so the foreclosure was fraud, as in the original mortgage contract does not fit the definition of a contract, because a unilaterally signed contract is not a contract. That's not what I'm teaching about. I could show you in law, but that is the case. But if you want to learn more about foreclosure and illegal foreclosures, I would say check out enforcetheconstitution.org, where Lamont Maurice Gill does a great job in breaking that down pretty well. And Jonah Bay does a great job of breaking that down. One more so from the constitutional standpoint, and although Jonah Bay is a constitutionalist, he does so more so from showing you the principles of commerce and banking and pointing you to the Uniform Commercial Code. All right. He doesn't even get into as much the Federal Reserve circulars, which break down what is happening in our banking and the lack of compliance at the state level with the banking laws. Now, this is not new. I was reading, it's been going on since the early 1900s, actually. And so that is part of the reason why there is the oversight on the federal level for the state banks, okay, the state run banks. But it takes people in order to enforce these policies. And it takes people to step on the rights of other people and to ignore those policies. And in some places, it has become culture to do just that, step on the rights of others. All right, even when they're making claims in commerce that, hey, I accept this right, I take responsibility, I want to move into something different and else. I'm alive, not dead at sea. But people think that you have to earn your right to be treated correctly. And that's actually repugnant to other treaties and laws. So I do challenge you to rethink this thought of saying maxims that are contrary to other agreements. Okay. All right. So here, I was reading, I went to the court to pull up some documents to the, I don't like, well, how can I say? I didn't know how to access this database without going into the legal library at the county in which I domicile. Okay. And by the way, with my specialty being homeless, what I want to say is there's such thing as effective homelessness. Effective homelessness is where you don't have a permanent contract or lease or agreement for a living arrangement. So it's called effectively homeless. Okay. Now, okay, I'll just stop there with that one. So I have been made effectively homeless with no consideration given for the mortgage that several $1,000 have been paid on. And even there is, for the one who was paying, there was $110,000 in surplus on it. So there's a large amount of monies on the back end when it comes to the insurance policies that are cashed in when one quote unquote defaults. And then there are situations that are created so that one is forced into a default situation. So when you're looking to acquire a home, if you don't know how to do what's called a secure transaction, you might be tempted to go into a dead pledge called a mortgage. All right. But I'm encouraging people to learn how to read as the bankers and bankers get more desperate, and as the ones who are learning how to step up and be in honor and commerce are also being attacked physically and financially, and emotionally being attacked. So it makes it difficult to stand up when you're being attacked. Not to say it can't happen or you can't. I'm just saying I know that there are several women who have expressed being poisoned, being harassed, having death threats made upon them. There are several women who have shared this already. And we also know that in the unconstitutional 702, the section 706 targeting, that 70% of those who are mistreated are women. So yes, one can do an injunction, one can put a lien on their straw, one can come into the private, you can take beneficial ownership. This is not the correct order necessarily. One can take beneficial ownership of their estate by turning in their coupon to the county. You know what your coupon is? The bill of lading. Okay. This is important to know to remain safe right now. This has become a situation where I say all first responders, all of your presidents of the county. Does everyone know who a president of the county is? The president of the county, everyone wants to talk about who's going to be the next president of the United States. Who's going to be but why does it matter? And you don't even know who the president of your county is. The president of your county is your sheriff. Your sheriff is the president of your county. And I think that matters way more than the President of the United States. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't matter, but when you, as man or woman, as a citizen, as a national, however you choose to navigate, um, when you know how things are supposed to be, you self govern, you communicate with your pen or someone who can help you communicate. If you know how things are supposed to be, then it's a piece of cake to be the president of the US. Because what you're going to do is make sure everybody else does what they're supposed to do, plain and simple. But when we don't know who we are, or we don't know our rights, then it gives the president a lot more room to do a lot of other things other than what we really need, which is good roads, which is compliance to the laws that are there, that derive from the ancient law that my ancestors created. Right? We'll go into that history on another day. But let's see here. I want to talk about following the rule, not what you feel, think, or believe, but just following the rule. And a lot of times people have problems with that. So, one of the first matters of law is status. Now, I think I shared the other day, I went into a public bank and I wanted to open up um, an account at the bank because I wanted to tie in my business in the private with my business in the public. You know, you have to tie it in. It's not like you just go one day from being in the public to just being in the private. It doesn't happen like that. So someone looked at me and they told me that I was a citizen because they gave me some paperwork and I was going through the form. I was like, make sure that you click on there. Don't put U.S. citizen because I'm not a U.S. citizen. And my status at the time was documented on my passport as U.S. national. Okay. So as we're figuring out which way we're going to go, there are pros and cons to various different statuses, right? So I want to share with people, don't ever just assume that you know someone's rights in commerce because more than likely you have been trained that you're going to deal with citizens who are residents of whatever state which you are employed by, especially if you're a first responder. So as people are choosing their status, as they've always been able to, you'll find that that's not the case with everyone. So someone's going to tell me I'm a U.S. citizen when I know that I'm not a U.S. citizen. Now, have I fully gotten all my affairs in such a way of where I've corrected all the contracts? No, right? But I'm trying to, um, I'm going to take a break right quick. Just a quick little pause. Okay. So We want to learn how to be more responsible, how to claim our birthright to joy, claim our birthright to happiness, right? Claim our birthright to peace, right? That is our birthright. But with our right comes the responsibility. So I want to help you gain the knowledge so that you can evaluate your behaviors so you can be light, right? Our behaviors start with our thinking, right? So first is that spirit, which is taking time to, this is not, spirit is not taking time, but connecting with the spirit. There are a number of ways that you can do it, but one of the most effective ways that I know has worked for people, what they've told me, is really doing that deep breathing twice a day, 10 minutes, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Take time and connect. You have thoughts that are intrusive, just connect back to the feeling of the air coming in your nose. You'll develop your own healing processes there, right? You won't find that you need things outside of yourself to make you feel better, right? You'll heal and you'll be able to repair yourself like that. And of course, that's just one way that I know works for people. I've had someone say, oh no, I don't like that. I don't like how it feels. Well, I already know that that's because you haven't done it enough. You're not used to it. It's not because it's not great for you. And I've, been in situations where, what was it? I shared this in inpatient when I used to work inpatient with some highly functional, great people, and it helped them a lot. Okay, so there's a spirit then, and these are all connected, but then your thoughts, and you can control your thoughts. Yes, you can. The way you control your emotions is by controlling the breath and controlling your thoughts and then your emotions. You will have more control over your emotions, right? These are some very surface things, but helpful for those who are looking for somewhere to start, all right, with making sure they're showing up as their best self. Then we want to look at what we do, all right? So I encourage you to have the habit of gaining knowledge. Hosea 4:6 says, it's due to lack of knowledge that my people shall perish, right? We don't read enough. We don't know what the words that we read mean. So I encourage you, I have downloaded Black's Law Dictionary, and I've also, I have the habit of Googling the etymology of a word so I can really learn what it means, because we miss out when we don't know what we sometimes don't recognize we've assigned our own meaning to something and it's not what it truly means. And it is important to know. All right. So, because if you don't, then you get taken advantage of and you take advantage of others unintentionally, I think. So, let me read to you what I pulled up today. Now, if everybody was doing what they're supposed to do, we wouldn't have a problem. So, at the county, where my state is now connected, all right. Why is my state connected? Because I put a trust on the record, on the county record, and I'm in the process of going through the redemption process, I would say. That's the best way to say it. All right. So I went to the county record and I pulled up a court case, and I looked at the petition that was in there from an egregious, unethical real estate investor. Now, I know real estate investors, but they would never buy occupied homes from an auction. Well, why would they do that? They wouldn't do that because they don't have any desire to displace anyone. Now, if they did buy from an auction, they would go in, they would meet the homeowner, and they would offer them some type of funds, help them move for several $1,000s, maybe repair their credit or something like that if they wanted to have a home that didn't need that much work. But the reason I say an ethical and egregious investor is because this man, he purchased at the auction. It was not lawful, might have been legal, but it's not in line with the Constitution for the United States of America, which is bound by the treaties, bound by the Treaty of the Delawares, bound by the Treaty of Marrakesh, bound by the Treaty of Tripoli. That's where our protections are as those who have been mislabeled African American and Black. All right. Those who maybe are here some other way other than being original and indigenous to this land, maybe your protection is in the state constitutions. And I'm not trying to say that you don't need to know the state constitutions, even if you're protected by the federal constitution because of the treaties and the Articles of Confederation and our ancestors being part of creating some of those treaties. And even if some of them were not party to the treaties, it is still the case that we are identified. Once we wake up and start declaiming, it must be honored. Okay, so with that said, don't just look at me or anybody else nowadays and just say, oh, they're a U.S. citizen and I can treat them however I want because of their status of being treated as stock and surety for the name, right? That would be a mistake. That wouldn't be correct. And if you follow the idea and maxim of do no harm, which is what is in effect, it's do no harm, particularly after the doctrine of discovery, March 30th, 2023. It's do no harm. That's what we're moving into. Okay. So with that said, let me just read something and clarify for the one who is in the role of police officer and one who's in the role of a deputy sheriff, but they don't know the Constitution for the United States of America. You cannot be an effective deputy sheriff if you don't know the law of the land. The sheriffs, the sheriffs, they are responsible to the people, and they are in higher authority than the police, or better yet, than the police, I would say policy enforcers, because they enforce the corporate policy. They enforce the corporate policy, but the sheriffs have a responsibility to the law of the land. Not that the police don't, especially with the overturn of the Chevron difference case. It's documented in writing that there is no administrative decision that is to override the Constitution. Okay. Okay, just a sec. So the ruling, the landmark decision, it was made June 28th. Okay. And the name of the decision is the Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, Raimondo. Loper Bright Enterprises. So I encourage people to look that up. I encourage you to look that up. I encourage you also to look up the Geneva Conference. The Geneva Conference rules. Why? Because many of us are recognizing that there is protection there too. That's an international treaty, right? So you're a deputy sheriff protecting the people on the land You must know the law. You must not just feel a certain way or, oh, we can fix it later. Some damage is irreparable. There's no amount of money that could really fix it, but we'll try, but not really, especially if you end up, someone's life is lost in the process of you doing something wrong. And you can stress people out to the point where they're traumatized and they have an increased risk of a health event, and then they end up not being here. You can't change all the things that happen, the fallout that happens from your behavior, but you can control your behavior. And so that's why it's important to act on right knowledge, and it's important to have accurate thinking in this time that we're in. So this man, this egregious investor, I won't use his name this time. He acquires a property at an unlawful foreclosure, and he then, this is practice, this is the culture. This is why I'm speaking to you, because it's unacceptable. All right. So he goes to landlord and tenant court. Landlord and tenant court at the county. And this is the practice. This is in violation of international law. This is in violation of the treaties. This is in violation of the law of the land. Okay. He goes to, because there's an adverse claim on the record, that he was given notice of the adverse claim, but he didn't adhere to that. So he's fully aware of it, but he doesn't think that is a problem. It's a problem. To break the law is a problem. And Uniform Commercial Code is there to help us be aware of the ancient principles in commerce. It's not just something somebody made up. All right. It's something that is there to help us like self-correct. But if we don't read or we don't apply it, then we can't self-correct now, can we? So I'm sure there were things along the way that I was to do that I didn't do. I didn't know to do. And I'm not going to complain about some of the factors that might have gone into me not doing them. But it's multifaceted. Okay? It's multifaceted. So this part, he goes to landlord-tenant court and he receives a judgment. He receives a judgment. Now, the petition that he put in is, poor me in landlord-tenant court. The tenant is a tenant because all the contracts have not put in proper status, obviously. The tenant is a tenant of the state of Maryland. However, the tenant and defendant is documented as not being a U.S. citizen. In more than one place, this is documented. So it's a problem. And in the court case before that, before the petition for judgment, it's documented. So now in the district court, the landlord-tenant, here goes an opportunity for the one who is the so-called judge in the role of administrative court, administrative magistrate, right, has a responsibility as a trustee of the estates to act in good faith. Now, I'm not going to go down all the details how that didn't happen, but it didn't happen. And so I want to read the paper that the sheriff is to read and put into place or not put into place, because the judiciary gave an order, and the order has to be carried out properly. But because people are not clear on what they're reading, they're misinterpreting what is put forth. This message is not to the so-called magistrate. The so-called magistrate knows what he's doing. And if he doesn't, hopefully this will make the way back, that it is punishable by prison time up until life, as it relates to violating the rights of a U.S. national. So when people come before you, you don't want to be like, well, I'm going to manipulate whatever little bit they say for my benefit. That's not smart. That's not smart. And it doesn't fit the rule of do no harm. It does not fit that. And that's the standard here. Okay. So let's see. Let me go. This form is called petition for warrant of restitution. So the word warrant is war rant. So everyone knows what it means to rant, and we all know what it means for war. So a war rant. Petition for warrant of restitution. So this investor who's paid nothing, to given no kind of consideration to the lawful occupant, is putting forth the petition to say, I want restitution. I want mine back. You want mine back from who? You want yours back from the state of Maryland, right? Because you have given funds, even though you were told, you were given notice that there was an adverse claim and a trust on the record, but you decided to you were made aware. So buyer beware, right? This particular buyer was aware, and I guess they figured that their title insurance was going to be fine. So the buyer goes through the process. They're like, oh, this process is speeding up. I'm not sure why. So they go to landlord-tenant court at another court on the other side of town, and they demand their restitution. Put out this lawful occupant. I give you nothing. I care about your health, not. I care about where you're going to go, not. I care about moving your things in an orderly fashion, not. I care about your caregiver or your fiduciary, making sure that you're cared for, not. The so-called judge, the magistrate, cares not. Doesn't ask the question, criticizes the announcement of an Article 3 court, right? Writes it down, no defendant. There is this culture at the particular state where I domicile about durable powers of attorney. And it seems to be a culture where people don't understand how they work. Either they don't understand or they pretend to not understand. Not sure which. But either way, it's very sad, and it's actually against international law. And I want to clarify so that we walk in honor. Okay? So what happens is the unlawful foreclosure, right? Illegal and unlawful, then leads into a judgment. Now, what happens when the judgment is given is that there's a paper that goes to the sheriff. The sheriff's office, the people there must read. They must read what's given to them. They cannot just say, someone, magistrate, told me. They did tell you, but they also told you you must read. So the warrant of restitution, the state of Maryland, county of, there's nothing there on the line, to the sheriff or constable. They check this box. The judgment for possession may not be redeemed. You are directed to deliver possession of the premises to the plaintiff slash landlord, not the landlord, but the plaintiff, or their agent or attorney, unless the local law requires otherwise. To move, I can't, their signature was open. To do something from the premises by force if necessary. All property of the defendant's tenants by any other occupant within 60 days. Now, it also says that reasonable accommodation under the American with Disabilities Act. Please contact the court immediately. Possession and use of all cell phones and other electronics may be limited or prohibited in designated areas of the court facility. Okay, so when it said that someone has a disability, the last thing you want to do is say they don't. This did happen, and that's not okay. So when you're in situations where someone tells you what to do, they're not going to hold the liability for you. And so whatever insurance you have, that's fine as well. But when it comes to certain punitive damages, right, it's unlimited. Punitive damages are unlimited. So you leave yourself open, right? You leave yourself open to be, how can I say, to be harmed, right? Or to be at a disadvantage because you didn't read and you didn't have the knowledge and understanding about how to work through the problem. All right, so this right here, it says you're directed to deliver possession of the premises to them or their agent and attorney unless local law requires otherwise. Well, local law requires otherwise. What is local law? Local law is first the law of the land. And even in some documents, it says, what jurisdiction is this? Is this common law? Is this the code for the state or what have you? So there are multiple jurisdictions. There are concurrent jurisdictions that are operating. And so it's important to read what it is you're doing. Another thing that's important to read, you can't say you tried to serve somebody when you didn't. Or you can't give proof that you did something that was necessary to be to take place in law and you didn't. So for instance, if you say you served everybody involved, then you should have paper that shows that you served everyone involved, right? Because when it comes to certain processes, the burden of proof is on the person who is removing the property or whatever have you. And I'll just go on the record to say I still abandon no right. Whatever starts in fraud remains in fraud. And so then there will be a lien on the title. A title is the bundle of rights that go along with the property. And so all the illegal and unlawful things that are done does not take away someone's right. It does not then terminate them being the lawful occupant. What it does is it is a trespass and an escheat on the right of the lawful occupant. So then you can't say to yourself, well, I did XYZ to put them out. And so now they were lawfully evicted. No, what it is that you trespassed on someone's right. That's what it is in law. You cannot unlawfully unoccupy a place. It is in the law that there should be exchange of value. Someone doesn't pay into something and then someone come and say, you get nothing and I'm going to put you out. So the point that I'm making now really isn't as much about each of the laws, which I can go over sometime. It's not as much about each of the laws. It's about thinking properly. Because someone told you to do something or someone told you something, hearsay does not make it true. It makes it what you believe. All right? And what you believe may or may not be true, but you can always verify it by evidence. So when you say something like, someone was lawfully evicted, then you should be able to say, as evidenced by papers that were delivered this date, as evidenced by whatever, not as evidenced by I feel and I think and somebody, Johnny told me, because these are people's lives that you're dealing with. And then when it becomes a pattern, it's a culture. And then as it becomes a culture, it just becomes, well, I'm not going to go down all the codes and everything that it becomes. But my point is to encourage people and to challenge people to read. And so I think do no harm is a better maxim to strive for, because those who make the statement, you don't have a right that you don't know how to defend. That's because you know that you would not do anyone harm like that. And you know that you would help and teach someone how to defend their own right. But there are others, whether it be lack of knowledge, lack of intelligence, lack of moral upbringing, there could be several factors, culture, all right, low level energy, greed, what have you, that need to have a higher standard. Their standard must be, I'm going to do no harm. All right. And then where there is harm done, be in a position to put that in place, make restitution, correct it, repent. And for the record, repent means to change your ways. Repent doesn't mean to feel sorry. Repent doesn't mean, what did TD say? He said, I can repent in my heart. You can't repent in your heart. You have to repent with your actions. To repent is to turn away from. It's not to play a mind game with yourself. Okay? So with that said, I just wanted to share this. Of course, there are things I'll do in the background, but as I'm going along my journey for freedom and restoration, redemption, there are just some key things that I know that won't be right until we each make a commitment to have our right thinking, then our right actions, and then our right deeds, right? Right thinking is that everyone is valuable. There's some things you cannot undo. You cannot untrash something. You cannot just go along doing things on how you feel or somebody told you in this low level energy. It's 2024. We have the internet. Everyone actually has the law at their fingertips, but it's not something that we tend to value. And I just encourage us to rethink that. Think, what if you're doing what you're doing to someone else, someone was doing to you? All right? I'm going back to the laws of Hammurabi, right? So that's my little challenge. All right. I thank you for hearing me. And you have a wonderful evening. And do no harm.